Greetings, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. I'm excited to introduce DevPulse, the app that tracked its own creation. What is DevPulse? DevPulse is a greenfield Microsoft Access project built to answer one question. What happens when a developer steps back from the keyboard, takes the role of project manager, and lets an AI assistant do 100% of the development work? DevPulse is both the answer to that question and the Access database application it created. As you'll see, the data in DevPulse tells its own story. I used my original version of DevPulse, which has a SQL Server backend. I used it because it has the complete inventory of projects I've been working on. When I make the database available to you, I will distribute two versions. One also connected to SQL Server Express, and the other with an Access backend. And in those two versions, only the DevPulse project itself will be included. The DevPulse Access database is a session tracking application for AI-assisted development. It was built entirely by Claude Code, and that's Anthropic's AI development, CLI. It did that under the direction of a human project manager, me, who wrote no code, created no forms, built no tables. I'll give you a guided tour of the Access application itself. The data you see here isn't sample data. It's the actual data DevPulse recorded as it was being built. It tells the story of our success and challenges and is the source of some insight into the strengths and weaknesses of AI-assisted development. In a future video, I'll offer you my answer to the question, what really happened when I gave up the developer role? And I'll also explain later, in another video, the most important lessons I learned from working with an AI assistant to build an Access database from the ground up, with me in the role of project manager and Claude Code in the role of senior developer. When DevPulse opens, the home form is a dashboard. As you can see, it lists open projects in the upper left. I have 4 projects currently in DevPulse, the original DevPulse development project, which is actually still in progress. This video is one of the final pieces in wrapping it up, so it's almost done. In the lower right of the dashboard, I have a little graphic showing progress by project. In the upper right, we have metrics. This carries the heavy weight of the dashboard. Projects for sessions 44, that means 44 times I've opened Claude and asked it to work on one of these projects. The more revealing metrics are these last two, revision cycles and context resets. A revision cycle happens when Claude Code is asked to perform a task. For example, I might say, Claude, add a button to the ribbon. This button should be this button should be enabled when the home form, the one we're looking at now, is open. It should be disabled when the home form is not open. Claude goes off and starts working on that task, and it tries something. And it displays a message on the screen that says, I tried this technique, it didn't work. Trying a different technique. Tried this technique, it didn't work. Trying a third technique. In other words, Claude does make mistakes sometimes, but the thing that matters is not making the mistake, but how it attempts to recover from that mistake. And that's what's captured by these revision cycles. That can be a good thing. Claude is looking heuristically for a solution that will allow it to complete the task it was given. It could also be a bad thing, because Claude, engaging in one of these revision cycles, could end up going down a deep, deep, dark rabbit hole. Ideally, I guess you do want Claude to recover from its missteps But you also have the responsibility as the project manager to watch and make sure it's not heading down a rabbit hole when you see those cycles start to build up. Even though Claude is doing the work and can be trusted to find an answer if it is at all possible, you're not absolved of the responsibility of managing. The other key metric on our dashboard is context resets. You've all seen this happen, I'm sure, when you're working with your AI agent. A message pops up saying you have now used 75% of your context. In about 10 minutes, you'll be shut down and have a timeout for the next 5 hours. A context reset is annoying, but it's not necessarily detrimental to the integrity of the project. However, they can lead to problems, and I've had this happen a time or two. Basically, what happens is this. You reach the end of your context, you have to stop working, you go away, come back 5 hours later, tell Claude, resume. It cheerfully pops up and says, welcome back. What do you want to work on now? And I will say, well, I want to resume where we were. And Claude will sadly say, I don't know where we were. And then I tell Claude, well, just look at our memory from the last session. Oh, unfortunately, we didn't get the memory written in time. The context window closed before we got the memory written. On another occasion, I said, look at the wiki. That will tell you what we're working on. And Claude said, wiki? What is this wiki of which you speak? That's when a context reset can be a disaster. Ideally, you want to scope and pace your work so that you can accomplish the entirety of your current task within the amount of context available in that session. I said that badly, but I think you know what I'm driving at. So context resets, although they are not necessarily bad, are an indicator that you are running risks with your data, and it's a sign that you need to readjust your working style, the scope of your tasks, so that you can remain within a single session, start the task, end the task, and have time left over to write up the memories and other task closing events that prevent loss of information. Like I said, that's a lot of weight for those two metrics to be carrying, but it tells a lot of the story about how I was able to work successfully with AI in building this application. Let's look at the projects form. Projects is a classic main form, subform design. The project itself is in the main form. We have the basic information about it, the name, the area. In this case, it's cross-domain because it includes both SQL Server and Access components. It's in progress at the moment, even although we're virtually at the end of this project. I should very soon flip it to complete and put the completed data in. There isn't much left to do. Some minor tidying up, I guess. As I've said a couple of times, Claude did all of the work in designing and building these forms, and basically they're pretty solid designs. Occasionally you'll see things like this where the subform control isn't tall enough to include all of the steps. It works, and my remit was that he would do the work and I would simply approve it. I want to spend more time on sessions. The data captured in the sessions tells some of the more important stories about our work together. We have a cascading combo box. You can select all steps or one step at a time to analyze. I'm displaying all steps. We started work on the 8th of May. In that very first session, we captured a very precise start and end time because I was focused on doing that day. This was our original design session. This is just slightly over half an hour. In retrospect, a half-hour session to plan and build this entire database project from the ground up was inadequate, and probably much less than was adequate. I can say that confidently because later on, issues surfaced that we hadn't considered prior to that point. That tells me, looking at a combination of issues that emerged and the relatively short initial planning session, that we could have done a much better job preparing for this project. The next thing I want to look at in the sessions is task 16, which I called out earlier as the rabbit hole session. This is the one where we had 11 revisions and a mid-session reset. We were working on the ribbon. I called it the rabbit hole session because of the high number of revision cycles we encountered. The root complexity was the ribbon XML syntax was not as familiar to Claude as some other aspects of Access, particularly VBA. A contributor was the sparsity of documentation about the ribbon XML that Claude was able to find. Eventually, I recognized that he was repeating some of the previous steps that he had already tried and which had failed. I stopped him, asked him to look at the Northwind Developer Edition ribbon and see if anything in that ribbon could help him solve his problem. He closed DevPulse, opened Northwind Developer, closed Northwind Developer, came back and said, I see now where the problem is. I will fix it. His 11th attempt, the one immediately after I told him to use Northwind Developer, was the one where he found the solution. That was a combination of factors. One, he was persistent. Two, I was vigilant. Together, we recognized the problem and immediately addressed it. Teamwork. In addition to the forms, we have one report. It's again a fairly basic report that Claude designed. I made one suggestion here. He had originally not put group footers for each of my projects. I added those, so we have 27 steps in DevPulse itself over 27 sessions. That's a coincidence. Isn't necessarily one-to-one. 72 revision cycles and 6 context resets. As I said before, I want to see some small number of revision cycles, but not a huge number. And context resets, the closer to 0 we can come, the better. We have lookup forms for each of the tables, like status. Look at statuses, for example. Planning progress, again, pretty basic look, pretty basic information. In the admin section, we have 3 options. We can do a compact and repair and backup of the front end. These are pretty standard. I usually put in most databases. And the clear data option, you can see our ribbon now working the way it's supposed to. I select the home form, and that lights up the clear data option, which allows us to clear all sample data from the application. You'll probably want to do that when you have finished reviewing my sample data. Start out fresh. That's a review of the physical database created by DevPulse. Are you interested in trying DevPulse out? I encourage you to do so. You can download the entire DevPulse project from GitHub. This is the URL for my GitHub repo for the DevPulse project. It includes all of the source code from VCS. I use Joyful Service. So all of the source code, all of the forms, reports, and VBA, etc., are available as text files. It also includes architecture documents about how the tables were designed and built. It includes the DevPulse story, and it includes 3 accdbs, the Access front end and back end, the Access front end set up to work with SQL Server, and it also includes a script to create and populate SQL Server tables with DevPulse data. You will have to create your own DevPulse database to put it in, and I'm sure you can do that yourself, but I did provide the script to create and populate the tables with the sample data. Download it, try it out, find its strengths, identify its flaws. I consider this version of DevPulse to be the starter version for those just beginning to explore AI. Starting tomorrow or the next day, maybe next week, I'll begin work on DevPulse Pro or DevPulse Developer version. I haven't decided yet what to call it. On the model of the Northwind, I might call it Starter and Developer. I might just call it DevPulse and DevPulse Pro. I would appreciate your feedback on what you like about DevPulse and what you don't like, because as I begin work on the design of the DevPulse Pro version, I will use your feedback to help improve it. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.